Blog Talk Radio.
Michiamo apura kanu apurai kaiknu neye AKANFO NANASOM da medinde ujirafo kwesi ranehem pata akan. Akwamumain amaruka etipi mu ojiramain mu. Greetings to all apurai kaini people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is AKANFO NANASOM Day, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Radnehempata Akan. Ojirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America, within Ojira Mind, the purified nation, Apurakani people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you once again for tuning in to the broadcast. We have some announcements, and also we're opening up the chat room as well. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, just hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. As we're opening up the chat room, if you have a question or a comment in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to use the chat room. If you do not have a username, you can sign up for one quickly on Blog Talk, and then you can interact in the chat room. For the individuals who are new to the broadcast, we have 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We have AKANFO NANASOM, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion, on Joda on Monday nights, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion and cosmology and culture and ritual practice and so forth, clearing up the misinformation being propagated by individuals in the Western Hemisphere as well as those on the continent who have been infected by white culture, whose presentation of Akan ancestral religion has been infected and so forth. So we deal with the Akan tradition specifically from an authentic perspective, dealing with our ancient Akan ancestry from ancient Khanit, the Khanit land, Nubia, Sudan, to West Africa as we migrated west to the regions of the ancient empire of Khanat or Ghana, and later to the regions of Ivory Coast and Ghana, and then a few hundred years after that, we were forced into North America, North Central South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo-Ketie, the Great Diversity, the enslaved era. So we talk about that direct migration and forced migration, showing how Akan people from ancient Khanat, a title of ancient Nubia, came from East Africa to West Africa to the Western Hemisphere. And we show not only the migratory pattern, but we also show the cultural migration as well. We continued our ancestral religious practices wherever we went on the continent, including into North Central South America, the Caribbean. Published in our book, Hoodoo People, the Hoodoo religion is the Akan religion in North America, just as Obia, the Akan tradition in Jamaica, and Winti is the Akan tradition in Suriname and South America. So we do go into that kind of detailed information on AKANFO NANASOM. On Tuesday nights, Abinada, we have Ojira, which means purification. It also means a celebration of purification. That is the definition in the Akan language. And then, of course, Jira means purification, as well as the celebration of purification in the language of ancient Khanat and Kamit, because, of course, this is the same language. So we deal with the purification of our ancestral religious practice. We deal with them in general, not just the Akan expression, but Apurakani, African ancestral religious practices in general, wherever we are found in the world. We always talk about ancestral religion is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, and contractive poles of ancestral religion, ritually incorporating divine law so that every thought, intention, and action is in harmony with divine law, and ritually restoring balance. So through ritual, we incorporate law so that we can align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order, and through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject, to repel, to hate, to repulse, in order to realign our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. So through the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, we align ourselves and realign ourselves with divine order. These are the expansive and contracted poles of ancestral religion. Ojira, purification, operationalizes nanasom, operationalizes ancestral religion, operationalizes the practice of ritually incorporating law and ritually restoring balance. So therefore, when we talk about Akurakani ancestral religion, African ancestral religion, nanasom, which is the catch-all term we use for that, we are talking about aligning every thought, every intention, and every action, every moment of every day with Nyame wa Nyame and Sheshe, or Amenet, Amen, the shared divine order, the divine arrangement. When we get off track, of course, we have ritual processes whereby we can realign our thoughts, intentions, and actions with order to restore balance to our lives. So we show how that impacts every aspect of our lives. We go through text, ritual practices, oral traditions, and so forth, from wherever we are in the world as Akurakani people, to show that continuity and show how it impacts every aspect of our lives. On Abukuda, Akuada Wednesday night, we have Egua Marketplace, where we have individuals, organizations, institutions from our community who are serving the community, the Akurakani community, Black community, in a positive capacity, and who also maintain their ancestral religious values in the process. So we've had individuals come on, talk about their businesses, organizations, institutions, how they began their business, how they're serving the community, how their ancestral religious practices inform their philosophical approach to serving the community in a positive capacity. When you go to our Okom Economic Development Model page on our website, you will see, and we'll place the link in there real quick in the chat room, we have published the Okom Economic Development Model, which is an economic development model rooted in our ancestral religious values. Therefore, it is a holistic model that addresses the 7 principal values of Amaintetu, or nation building, methods of food production and preservation, methods of curing disease, establishing a military structure, establishing institutions, training institutions, cultural institutions, learning institutions, ritual institutions, and so forth, religious institutions, establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence, the manufacturing of and developing, engineering, creating homes, of course, on acquired land, and of course, the manufacturing of clothing. So these 7 principal values of Amaintetu, or nation building, a holistic set of 7 values based on the Abosom, the govern the 7 days of the week and all natural cycles in creation. Our approach to Amaintetu, or nation building, restoration, is rooted in this constellation of 7 needs represented by these 7 principal values, and we have individuals who have businesses, organizations, and institutions that are serving one or more of these needs. So we've had a number of individuals come onto the show, sit with us for 2 hours and talk about their businesses, organizations, and institutions. When you go to the Okom Economic Development Model page, you can see their website, links to their websites. You can see the links to all of the interviews that we've done with the people who came onto the show. You also see the link to the Okom Economic Development Model publication, which you can download, free download, of course. We also have a 4-part series that we did on Blog Talk, dissecting that model and showing its application, as well as 2 other videos. And part of the process in Okom is to starve the beast and feed the pride for our economic development. That means on a weekly basis, we make a determination of what funds we would have potentially wasted with the whites in their offspring, and then we starve the beast and feed the pride. We take those funds away from those white businesses and reallocate them to the business, organization, or institution of the week. We are targeting one Akurakani business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks. And as a community, we've engaged that process since February. So when you look on the list of businesses, these are the businesses we have been targeting. And the last one that one of them, when you look in the Hoodoo Mind Festival broadcast, and you'll see that when we published the Hoodoo Mind Journal, the Hoodoo Nation Festival Journal, which was a journal connected to our Hoodoo Nation festival that we had in Washington, D.C. in October 17th. You'll see in the back of that journal, in addition to the various articles and so forth on Hoodoo, you'll see a list of businesses, organizations, and institutions as well, a directory of businesses, many of whom were at the festival vending, but then also some who are not. Those businesses are part of that Okom Economic Development Model as well. So all of that information is on the page. So, a couple of announcements. We had just recently, a couple of nights ago, we were in Durham, North Carolina, doing a presentation on Hoodoo, the Akan ancestral religion born of the blood circles of AKRADINBOSOM in North America, based on our book, Hoodoo People and the Hoodoo Mind, Nhoma. It was a good event. We were grateful for the turnout and the people who came. There was a great interchange of information and exchange of ideas and so forth and experiences. So we look forward to returning to Durham once again to connect with the community out there. We had the presentation at the Vegan Flavor Cafe, which is owned by Ma'at Ima'akaru and Ya'ai Tafari Amin, husband and wife team. Ma'at has been on our show on a couple of occasions, talking about her publication, What's in Your Womb, talking about the holistic approach to wellness for womb wellness for Akuraikai women. But she also is the convener of the Head Ma'akal, the Soul Psychic Fair. So there are a couple of broadcasts on the Oklahoma Economic Development Model page where you see Ma'at's information, but they just recently opened up the Vegan Flavor Cafe in Durham, North Carolina. It's 4125 Durham, Chapel Hill Road, Boulevard in Durham, North Carolina. So it's a great venue, and it was a great event. So again, we thank them and the community for coming out. We will be posting some information for our next event coming up. We had an event, for example, since the beginning of our year, which was September 23rd, the equinox. That was the first day of our new year, which is the year 13,006. It began on September 23rd for us. We had our annual seven-day Ojira or Obrajira New Year observance. The final day is the first day of our new year, which was September 23rd. We had an event on the Minida, the Saturday within that 7-week period here in D.C. People came from different states to come and celebrate that aspect of the New Year celebration. Then the next month in October, we had the Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival, showing the Akan ancestral religion. We had speakers, including, we did a presentation, Kamal Makesi Tuhuti did a presentation, Ama Asase Ajay did a presentation out of Florida, and then we also had a number of vendors, so it was a communal event, great information. After that, a couple weeks after that, we were in Montgomery, Alabama, doing a presentation on Kukutuntum, the ancestral jurisdiction. It was a great event. November 15th, the following week, we were back in D.C. for our Kokoko movement, eradicating dissexuality, homosexuality from the Afro-Akani community through ancestral religion. November 22nd, we were in Decatur, Georgia, dealing with the Hoodoo piece once again. And then November 28th and 29th, we were in just outside of Rochester, New York, and then in Hartford, Connecticut. And then last week, just a couple of days ago, we were in Durham, North Carolina. This December 22nd, we'll be posting information regarding an event December 22nd here in Washington, D.C. December 22nd is actually a Benada, which is a Tuesday evening. It is the first full day of the name period, which is the winter solstice period. So we'll be having a presentation in D.C. On December 22nd, which is a Tuesday night, Benada night. So we'll be posting information on that. Of course, it's a free event. We plan to give out, as we always do, a free copy of one of our books. We'll be giving away one of our books to everyone who attends. Of course, all of our events are free. Of course, they are free and open to Afro-Akani people only. All of our events are free. And in addition to that, we give away a free copy of one of our books to everyone who attends the event. So we'll be posting information on that later tonight. We also have our 17 books that we have published. When you go to the Nhoma page, publications page, you will see the 17 books. The ebook versions of all 17 of our books are free downloads from the website. So whether you have funds or not, you can always access this information. 17 books. We've also published over 70 articles. And then we've over 190 broadcasts on Blog Talk Radio where we examine our books, articles, as well as other information. So all of those things you can download for free. Then we also have the soft cover versions of our 17 books. They range between $8 and $11. Any order of 5 books or more, 5 books is 20% off. So the first 5 books, for example, is $40. Any order of 10 books or more is automatically 30% off. So, for example, the first 10 books in our series is $66 for 10 books. And then any order of 10 books or more, whether it's 10, 11, 12, or the whole 17-book set, automatically 30% off. But the basic price for even one or more is between $8 and $11. So if you'd like to support the work that we are doing, please go to the Nhoma page, the website, the publications page on our website. This is how we generate funds to deal with our operations, and also it allows us to be able to present to the community in different cities and states, and we never charge admission fees to any of our events wherever we go in the country, and we also do not charge a speaker's fee to organizers of our events. And then we also give away a free copy of our book. So we've been able to give away over 600 softcover books free to the community, and that's based on the support that we receive from the community, specifically through whenever you purchase one or more of our books, you're supporting the work that we're doing, and you're also supporting that free book giveaway. Whites in Alice Springs are giving away free Bibles, Qurans, and all that other nonsense every day of the week to our people wherever we are. So we need to combat that misinformation with real information. So please go to the Nhoma page on our website. You can purchase one or more of our books, whether for yourself or for friends, family, for gifts, birthday gifts, and so forth. All right, so we're going to get into this information for tonight. And the topic for tonight is from Khanit, Nubia, to Sumer, Akan, origin of the 7-day week. This is a broadcast that we had planned to do a couple of weeks ago. Normally, as we said earlier, we have three broadcasts per week. Last week, we were only able to do one broadcast, and then the week before that, we were only able to do one broadcast, so there were 4 broadcasts that we actually missed. And that was because of our travel schedule and coming back from out of town. There were certain, conflicts in schedule. We weren't able to get that together, but it was fine because we pushed the information up and we're doing it tonight. So we had planned to do it a couple weeks ago, but we can get it done tonight. So what we're dealing with is the origin of the 7-day week and the connection to the Akan people. And it's very critical for a number of reasons. Of course, the 7-day week is used all over the world. It did not come from the Romans. It didn't come from the so-called Jews. It didn't come from the whites in the offspring. It came from our people. Now, when you look in Afuraka, you will see that different groups have different structures. You see the Akan have a 7-day week. You see the Igbo have a 4-day week. You see the Yoruba have a 5-day week. You see the Guan people in Ghana have a 6-day week. But you have the Akan have a 7-day week. So everybody has their specific reasons why they have engaged certain cycles, whether it's market days and so forth. Just as the Akan deal with the deities that govern the sun, moon, and planets that animate the 7-day week and that 7-day cycle, as well as the 7-day chronobiological cycle called the circumception cycle. It governs the physiological processes in our bodies. It's akin to that and related to that 7-day week, the movement of the sun, moon, and the different planets in position that govern all natural cycles. Just as we align with the deities that animate these celestial bodies, you have the Igbo, for example, who have their 4-day week. And when you look at Igbo cosmology, they will talk about the specific Arusi, the deities in Igbo tradition that govern the 4 days and that specific 4-day cycle. And they have 2 sets of 4 days, which makes up an 8-day cycle and so forth. And they have their own month associated with that. They have names associated with their 4 days as well. So each group came into their own cycle based on the relationship, based on the agreement that they forged with the Abosom, with the divinity in their clan. The same is true, of course, with the Akan. The key, however, is when the whites and offspring see, once they invaded and began to infiltrate and eventually start sending their ethnographers into different parts of West Afuraka, they're coming across the Akan people. and they see the Akan people have a 7-day week, and the names of the deities are connected to the days of the week, and people are named after the deities who are connected to the 7 days of the week. They see it's a totally holistic system. But at the same time, they recognize their 7-day week is a copy of that. They do not want to admit that, because then they have to admit that the Akan are more ancient than they would like to admit. Just like they don't want to admit that black people are the founders of civilization. Khanit people are the founders of civilization in ancient Kamit, so-called Egypt, and Khanit, Nubia, and so forth, as well as the Near East. They don't want to admit that. They don't want to admit to anything that points to that reality. But the key is, that's what it really is. So when you look at the Akan tradition, and then we show the connection between the Akan tradition in West Africa to the ancient Akan ancestral tradition in East Africa in Khanit, which is a title of ancient Nubia, we have made those connections. We have proven through our publications that the Akan people are the ancient Khanit people, or Khanit people, the people of ancient Nubia, and we worship the same deities by the same names that you find in the Medusa, the hieroglyphs in ancient Khanit, Nubia, as well as Kamit. The same ritual functions, same aspect of creation that they govern, same planetary bodies, stars, earth, mother, rivers, oceans, mountains, everything. So we did a series of articles on the AKRADINBOSOM, the deities that govern the 7-day week, which also govern our Kradin, our soul names, our publications on these deities, proving who they are, what their names are, what their functions are in the Akan language, and showing they have the exact same names and functions in ancient Kamit. We are the first to prove that amongst Afro-Akani scholars as well as non-black scholars. Our series of publications on the deities of the 7 days of the week are the most extensive, and we have uncovered information that up until that point, Ghanaian academics as well as non-black academics were not able to produce. So that is source information that people have to go to our publications to get that information, because it does not exist anywhere else. Now, once they actually investigate that information and verify it, then people have begun to include it in their publications as well, because it's easily verifiable, because we show those references. So that's the key. Akan people will talk about the origin of that practice, and what we're going to show tonight is that ancient Akan ancestral religious practice being connected thousands of years ago to our people, and how we migrated up into the Near East and carried that 7-day week into the Near East, continued that practice, and then once the whites and their offspring invaded the ancient Near East, Sumer, later called the Akkad Empire, Akkadian Empire, and later Babylon and so forth, they learned of that 7-day week because they had invaded the black centers of civilization where our people were, founded by Akan-speaking people. They took that 7-day week and they continued that process amongst themselves. So this is where it comes from. All right. So first what we're going to do, we're going to put a link in the chat room, which is the link to the AKRADINBOSOM page on our website. Okay. And when you go to the AKRADINBOSOM page on the website, you'll see the list of 11 articles with 11 male and female divinities that animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week. Then you will see a series of 11 videos where we dissect each one of those 11 articles. And then there's a series of 12 videos, which is one is introductory, which is summary of everything, and then the other 11 videos are videos of our Blog Talk Radio broadcast, where we spent some more time detailing that information, each one of those articles. So you have the 11 articles and then 2 sets of videos that go with each one of the articles to further examine the articles in detail to prove that information. So we just put the link in the chat room for that. So first one we're dealing with, first we'll talk about the Akan tradition, the oral tradition, the ritual tradition. Then we'll talk about the evidence, which is archaeological, linguistic, anthropological, and so forth, and genetic that shows the migration of the ancient Khanit people, Nubian people, through North Africa up into what would later be called Sumer, the establishment of that culture in Sumer. So when Akan people are asked, why are you Akan? What does Akan mean? Of course, in the Akan language, in the Mpanyimpo, the Nananum Mpanyimpo, the spiritually cultivated elders and eldresses will say, well, Khan, in the Akan language, Khan means first or foremost, from the beginning. So that identifies us as a component part of the first people, Khan, to come into existence into the world. Khan also means to count, to calculate, or reckon. So we are a component part of the first people to engage in counting, calculating, reckoning, measuring, the foundation of civilization. When you can count and calculate, measure, and establish patterns in creation, recognize those patterns in creation, make determinations based on your calculations, you can establish a society that's an orderly society, because you can recognize the order in creation when you count and measure and calculate and reckon. So, Khan means to count, calculate, or reckon. Khan also means bright, brilliant, luminous, talking about illumination, talking about wisdom, talking about being connected to the Abosom, the forces in nature, connected to Nyankumton, the creator or creatress, children of the Okraa, children of the sun, and so forth. Also dealing with the ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, who are quote-unquote luminous, shining, and so forth. So these are the three definitions of Khan. First, foremost, from the beginning, Khan, to count, to calculate, or reckon, Khan, bright, brilliant, or luminous, Khan. When you look in the language of ancient Kamit and Khanit, the term Khan means first, foremost, from the beginning, the south, the land of the south, the front land, the first land, the land of the beginning. The Khan land of Khanit land, Khanit land. The people are called the Khanit people. And that is the title of the people of, quote-unquote, Nubia or Sudan. Khan in the language of ancient Kamit also means to count, to calculate, or reckon. Khan also means bright, brilliant, luminous, dealing with the people themselves. So we dealt with that when we did the broadcast on Ipibrifo and the Tuareg and Fula and the Akan of the Western Desert and so forth. So we went into some detail about that. So we have these definitions defining our people, specific characteristics with the same term that's been going on for thousands of years. In the Akan language today, when you look at the ancient language, the exact same three definitions, meaning the exact same thing, referencing the exact same people, the same ethnicity. Now, when Akan people talk about the origin of the 7-day week, why do we have a 7-day week? What is the basis of the 7-day week? The names of the days of the week are the names of the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7-day week and the spirits that animate those celestial bodies. So, for example, you have Benna, the Abosom Benna, the male divinity Benna, the planet that's also named after him called Benna. That planet, by the wife and offspring, is called Mars. We call that planet Benna, and the divinity that governs that planet is Benna. He's a male divinity force in creation that governs the divine immune system in creation, enforcer of divine order, the Abosom of hot metal and war and enforcing divine order, the immune system within creation. We have the female Abosom, Abena, who governs that divine lymphatic system in the great divine body of creation, part of the divine, military structure within the great divine body, just like you have an immune and lymphatic system in your body that wages war against cancer cells and so forth, enforces the order within your body. Within the great divine body of Aminet and Amen, or Nyamewa, Nyame, there's a divine immune and lymphatic system. These are the spirits, Benna and Abena, in the Akan tradition. Of course, in Yoruba, they're called Ogun and Iyami Abeni, and so forth. So, Benna, they govern the male and female forces that govern the planet. Look at the term Ben and Bere. Bere means red. Ben means to become red by boiling, hot, firing. Something becomes hot and fiery and burned, and then it becomes red by boiling. If your skin gets burned with some hot water, it becomes red and so forth. Get fired up. Your eyes become red when you're intense and so forth. So, then to become red by boiling, hot red by boiling. Ben or bere also means the color red just in general. The spiritual force that animates the planet. Bena, his sacred color, is red. When you look at the planet itself from the position of Earth, it gives off a reddish glow. Now, the planets themselves in the Akan tradition are called Ochin Nsoroma. Ochin means to wander, to explore. Nsoroma, Ma means children. Nsoro means the sky, the heaven. Nsoroma means the children, Ma of Soro, of the sky. And Ochin Nsoroma, and so Nsoroma, the children of the sky, are the stars. But then specifically the Ochin Nsoroma are the Ochin, the wandering, explorative Nsoroma, or stars. Why are they the wandering, quote-unquote, stars, the explorative stars? Because the movement of those particular stars are moving in a consistent pattern on a weekly basis, moving into their same positions on a weekly basis. So they're constantly moving. Whereas you have certain stars, like the stars that never set and so forth, they're in the same position every night. But then you have certain stars that keep moving on a regular basis every night, moving into a different position when you see them from the vantage point of Earth. So this is why they're called Ochin Nsoroma. When you look at the Ochin, you look at the Ochin Bena, it gives off a reddish glow, a reddish tint. And that red energy, when we apprehend that red energy, when you look at any color, it stimulates that energy within you. The differences between the colors are their rate of vibration. You have those slower moving vibrations giving off darker colors. Faster, fiery moving vibrations give off those lighter colors. Something is burning. As a matter of fact, you see it starts to burn, and it can burn reddish or orangish and so forth, because that energy is constantly moving, fiery and so forth. So anytime you apprehend any color, you send your energy out to perceive a color, the vibrations that generate that color, whether it's red or blue or yellow or whatever it is, that affects your nervous system. It affects your eyes, it affects your nervous system and so forth, any color. This is why there's a such thing as color therapy. This is why there's a such thing as utilizing colors to affect the mood of the person, because the difference between colors are their rate of vibration. Every color gives off its specific frequency or rate of vibration. So when you see the planet Bena, for example, Abena, and it gives off that reddish tint, that reddish energy, affects the spirit and the body of our people. The spirits and the bodies of our people. No different than we know the sun has a direct effect upon us. It's the most powerful, star closest to us, so you can feel the heat of the sun. Of course, we understand that impact. The moon is not as powerful as the sun, obviously, but it still has direct impact. We understand that. We understand that the gravitational pull of the moon affects the rising of the tide on Earth. But since your body is part of Earth, then the gravitational effect of the moon also has a direct effect upon the rising of the tide of water within your body. So your body is over 70+% water. When you breathe in, as well as taking in liquids and moisture from foods as well, you have the capacity to retain a lot of that moisture, or you can burn up some of that moisture. Because of the gravitational effects of the moon upon the body, causing the tides to rise on Earth, but also the tides to rise in your body, to cool you down to a certain extent, so then you're able to retain more of the water that you receive when you drink. Instead of burning it up, through regular activity, it allows you to hold on to the water that you receive when you breathe in, the moisture, and hold on to more of that. That causes, as well as the foods you eat, so that causes the quote-unquote tides in your body, the water to rise and expand. When your tides in your body rise, you're more watery, then you're more introspective, you're more cooled down, you're more contemplative, introverted, intuitive, and so forth. When you begin to generate that fire within yourself and you start burning some of that water out, you become more extroverted, external, aggressive, and so forth. And your mental output and your temperament and your expressions manifest that fired up kind of energy. So the moon has an effect on the body. The sun, of course, has an effect on the body. We understood because we can verify that the other Ochin Nsoroma, the planets that are within the orbit of the Okraa, the sun, also, their gravitational pulls have a direct effect upon our body. Anything that you can see has a direct effect upon your body. When you can see that planet with that reddish tint generating that energy, the fact that you can see it means the energy within your body has reached that orb, and its energy has reached you, and therefore you can see that red energy, but you're affected by it. And the fiery energy of that divinity also builds a bridge of energy from the planet to your body, and from your body to the planet. And your spirit's energy can travel across that bridge, and you have a direct connection, not only with the magnetic pull or the gravitational pull, the electromagnetic field of that planet upon this planet's electromagnetic field, and therefore the electromagnetic field of your body, but also the spiritual force that animates that planet. Also affects our spirit bodies as well. So we have a direct relationship with these deities. They possess our people. The divinity Benna possesses people, especially his children who are born under his direction, born under his energy complex, and therefore he makes sure they're born on his day. Benna Da, which is the day of Benna or Tuesday. Children born on Benna Da, for example, a male born on Benna Da is called Kwa Benna, meaning a servant or messenger, Kwa of the Abosom Benna. So when you hear Kwa Benna, you know somebody was born on Benna Da Tuesday, meaning their Okra, their soul, was assigned to the Abosom Benna before they even got into the womb. The Supreme Being, Aminet and Amen, or Nyame directed that deity to govern this spirit, and therefore they were sent into the womb to come to a specific blood circle, and the ancestresses and ancestors and the Abosom Benna will make sure that that child is born on Benna Da, on the day that his energy governs the planet, as an indication to the community that this baby, this child, this spirit, returning ancestor or ancestor was aligned with the Abosom Benna pre-incarnation. And this is why the Akan people have AKRADINBOSOM, soul name. Our soul, the crowd, the soul, the divine consciousness, the deity in the head region is governed by one of these major forces that govern the 7 days of the week and so forth. So when you see, for example, the planet Benna, that red energy, Ben meaning to become red by boiling, hot and so forth, Bere meaning red and so forth. The planet itself, Benna, of course, Benna in Akan, also called Benne, the fighter, the skirmisher, Benna, the warrior, divinity. He's also called Ogufo, Gu meaning to cast iron, to cast metal. So the Ogufo are the people folk who cast metal, Gu. Oguni is the individual ni who cast metal, Gu. And of course in Yoruba that becomes Ogun, and Ogun becomes Ogu. But these are titles of the Abosom Benna. When you look at ancient Kamit and Khanit, you'll find that Heru Beda or Heru Bedet is a warrior divinity, governs hot metal war, iron, and other kinds of metal, the divine enforcer of divine order. It is the same divinity. He's Heru Benna or Heru Bedat, also called Heru Bedet. This is Benna in Akan, also called Bene, governing the same planet with the same ritual color. His ritual color is red in ancient Kamit. He governs the same planet. And that planet is called Heru Desher in ancient Kamit sometimes, which means Heru Desher means the red Heru, talking about the redness of the planet of war and so forth, governed by Herakuti or Heru Bedet, Heru Bedat, the exact same divinity in Akan. Benna, red, planet Benna, warrior, governing hot metal, war, fire, the immune system, divine enforcer of order. We look in the legend of Heru Bedat, Heru Bedet, and so forth. He's directed by Ra to destroy the enemies of Ra, waging war against the enemy. He's the divine warrior. His blacksmiths, his followers, his priests and priestesses are blacksmiths with their iron weapons and chains and so forth. It was decreed that a metal statue of Heru Bedat or Heru Bedet be fashioned as a shrine for this divinity. He's the Abosom of metal, hot metal, war, fire, enforcer of divine order, warrior, and so forth, governing the divine immune system within creation. The exact same deity, with the exact same name, the exact same ritual color, the exact same functions in creation, governing the exact same planet, that you find in ancient Kamit and Khanit, you find in the Akan tradition. And our people get possessed by that divinity today, children as well as adults. So they're named after the divinity. This is the process. Give another example. When you look on Yauda or Thursday, Yauda is also called Yada. The male divinity, and by the way, the female divinity on Benada, Abenada. Female divinity is Abena, which is Sechima in Akan, Sechima or Sechimet in ancient Kamit, Sekhmet. The female warrioress divinity, Sekhmet or Sechimet, governs war on the female side, the divine lymphatic system in creation, destroying disorders sent by Ra, just like Herubehudet is sent by Ra to destroy the enemy. Sechima, Sekhmet is sent by Ra to destroy the enemy as well. Sechima kills and spills blood through warfare, but she also governs menstruation. So she spills blood through menstruation for cleansing of the body. This is why Sechima, Sechimet in ancient Kamit, the term Asechima in Akan means menstruation. And all girls who go through rites of passage upon the onset of menarche are called Sechima. They're also called Abrani, which is Abenani, or one of the children of Abena. And then in ancient Kamit, of course, Bedet or Bedat is a female version of Bedata or Bedat that becomes Abena in Akan. So Sechima and Abena, the names in Akan, is Sechimat and Bedat, Bedati, Bedata in ancient Kamit, the same divinity governing warfare, governing warrioress function, governing the same planet, also governing menstruation in Akan, governing the spilling of blood through menstruation, the cleansing in that regard, but also the warrioress aspect as well. So the same divinity, the same name, governing the same planets with the same ritual colors, which is red. Of course, the menstrual blood is red. It's also called Okra, the menses and so forth. Same ritual colors, same functions, same deities, same names that we still get possessed by and are governed by, and we name our children. Every single Akan child is named after one of these divinities. When you look at the image that we use for the promotional image for the show and you see the different deities of ancient Kamit, we're showing these are the exact same deities that the Akan people invoke every single day, and every Akan child is named after one of the deities of ancient Kamit and Khanit. The 11 deities are Alsar, Alset, Herubedet, Sekhmet, Set, Nebidhet, Heru, son of Alsar and Alset, Wachet, Nekabet, Het Heru, and Amen Men. The exact same 11 deities in Kamit and Khanit are the exact same 11 deities in Akan with the exact same name. So every single child in Akan culture is named after one of those deities. So, to give another example, if you look on Thursday, Yauda, also called Yada, Yao is a title of the divinity Usoro in Akan. Yao is the title of the same divinity Horo in ancient Kamit, which is Horu, Horo in Coptic, Heru in earlier times and so forth, but also different dialects have the same different pronunciations. Yao means fighter, warrior, aggressive, confrontational, and so forth. It means the same thing in ancient Kamit that it means in Akan, and that's a descriptive title of the divinity. Males born on Yauda are called Yao or Kwao. Females born on Yauda are called Ya or Abba or Ayaba. The female divinity, Ya, is called Wachet in ancient Kamit. But then the other female divinity, Ayaba or Ajaba, is called Nchaba or Nchebet or Nekebet in ancient Kamit. So you have Yao, Ya, and Abba. You have Heru, son of Alsar and Alset, Wachet, and Nekebet. So we did an article on each one of those three divinities. When you look at them, you look at the planet Jupiter. Jupiter is Jupiter or Yao Pater in Latin. Pater, which means father. Yao is the divinity, so Yao Pater is father. Pater, Yao, father, Yao. Yao Pater became Jupiter and Jupiter and so forth. That planet is called Heru of Shetar. Heru, the opener of the sacred land. It's also called Heru Seba Resu, the Heru, the star of the south. The planet, once again, being called a Seba, or a star. This we call the planets Ochin, Soroma, and Akan, the wandering stars. In Ancient Khanitu, they would call them Seba as well, stars as well. So Heru Sheta, or Heru Seba Res, the southern star. This is Heru operating through that largest planet, the king of the planets. Of course, Heru takes on the kingship after the death of Al-Sar. He ascends to that position. His planetary home is the planet Heru Sheta, also called Ya. So males born on that day are connected to that divinity. They're named after that divinity. The reason they are born on Yauda is because they were assigned to the Abosom Yao pre-incarnation, because they were assigned to him spirits, his ancestral spirits, before they entered into the womb of their future mother. They're drawn to Nyamewa, Nyame, the great mother, great father. They're assigned a specific Abosom to govern their head throughout the course of their lives. That deity attaches itself to the spiritual head of that ancestral spirit. Now that that spirit has a spiritual head, then they can be sent into a womb, and then 40 weeks later they're born into the world. And they're born as an ancestral spirit who has returned. But in their head, the spiritual crown of their head is that divinity that governs them. If they were assigned to Nana Yao pre-incarnation, the Abosom, the deity, will make sure that the baby is born on Yauda in our Akan culture to indicate to the community that this baby was assigned to Nana Yao before they got into the womb, and this is why the baby was born on Yauda, or Thursday, the day of the Abosom Yao, governed by the planet Yao and the spirit that animates that planet. Even if there was a cesarean section, they will make sure that no matter what the birth complications were, the baby will not be removed from the womb until Yauda, Thursday. So you'll see that information. If you look at the female divinity, Ya and Abba, which is Wachet and Nchaba, or Nyaba, or Nekabet, and so forth, those same divinities in our Akan culture, you'll see in Ancient Khanitu. Of course, Ya and Abba is Oya and Oba in the Yoruba tradition, two wives of Shango. And of course, Shango is Yao, which is Heru. So Heru, Wachet, and Nekabet. Yao, Ya, and Abba in Akan, Shango, Oya, and Oba in the Yoruba tradition. And you also have Hebioso, or So, and Abejida, and Ayaba in Vodun, the same three divinities. When you look, for example, at Wachet and Nchaba Nekabet, you see that Wachet, the term Wach means green in general, and the sacred color, Wachet, one of the sacred colors of her means green. She has the papyrus, the Wach plant, in the form of a scepter, and it means green, it means illumination, it means power, and so forth, growth, development. Watch means green, but when you look at the planet, Wachet, which is actually the planet Uranus, it has the bluish-green tint. Then you look at Nekabet, Nekabat, or Nchabet, or Nchabat, as we say in Akan. Nchabat becomes Nyaba, or Ayaba, Abba, in Akan. The sacred color of that vulture, that great mother spirit, is blue. But when you look at that planet, you'll see that it has a bluish tint. The bluish-green planet of Wachet, and then the sister planet of Nekabet, the bluish sister planet, of course, that is Uranus and Neptune, the two sister gas planets that are about the same size. When you look in our Ancient Khanitu, you'll see that Wachet and Nekabet are twin sister divinities. They have the same sacred colors. They govern and protect royal sovereignty and so forth. Wachet governing the northern Khanitu, and Nchaba and Nekabet governing southern Khanitu. When you look at our Akan culture, these same divinities with these same sacred colors governing these same planetary bodies are governing that same day. So therefore, females born on Yauda are also called Yada or Abada, are given the names Ya, Ayawa, different variations of that, Abba, Baba, and so forth. There are different praise names that are associated with that, but they're governed by these female divinities. That's because, of course, they were assigned to these female divinities pre-incarnation. They come into the world on that day because the Abosom makes sure that they are born on that day. And so the people are taking on names based on the divinity. From Earth, you can see that bluish-green tint of the planet, of the celestial orb. And that bluish-green energy, when you perceive that, project your energy towards it, provoke it, the energy affects your body in a specific manner, but the spirit that animates that celestial orb also connects with your spirit as well. The same thing when you see the bluish tint of or Nekabet, Nchaba, or Abba, so-called Neptune. So we see that from Earth. We attune to those forces in nature from Earth. We name our children based on the spirits that animate these planets and so forth. And the children take on those names. So this is the basis of the practice. This is the basis of the 7-day week. You have the sun, the moon, and the various planets, and the deities who animate these celestial bodies. And we're named after the deities. And we carry those divinities' energy because they were assigned to us pre-incarnation. These divinities possess our people. They communicate directly with our people, get inside the bodies of our people, and communicate on a regular basis, adults as well as children. We have shrines to them. We engage in divinatory consultation with them as well. We have shrines specifically for the Abosom that governs our head, specifically for AKRADINBOSOM, that people go to at least on a weekly basis to communicate directly with these divinities. This was not handed to us by some Romans or some other crackers. They cannot communicate with any deity. They learned about this process from our people in our Akan culture. So now, what about ancient Akan culture? What about the migrations and so forth? If you look in our book, Hoodoo People, and you also look, of course, in the Hoodoo Mind, the Hoodoo Mind Journal, but you look in the book Hoodoo People, Akan custodians of ancient Hoodoo from Hoodoo land, Khanit, Nubia. One of the articles that we included in that book is the Akan, the people of ancient Khanit, Akan land, Sudan, and Nubia. We talk about the etymological origin of the term. Then we also talk about the people migrating from ancient Khanat, Nubia, going north to establish Kamit, but then we also talk about us migrating west to establish the ancient empire of Khanat, the reestablishment of the Khanat or Nubian empire. Muslim invasion took place about 1,000 years ago. Some of our people migrated further south towards the forest belt, reestablished the Khanat civilization in the forest belt, and then some of our people a few hundred years later were forced into North Central South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musul Kepti, the Great Perversity, the enslaving era. But we also want to talk about our migrations further north up into what would later be called Sumer, later called the Near East. In the Abosom and the Nokwadesem, the true story of our people, the oral traditions of our people, in Akwamu Mine, Amadokai Sifimu, the Akwamu nation in North America, as well as Akan people on the continent, learning directly from our Nsamafo, our ancestresses and ancestors, as well as the elders and eldresses, the Nananom Mpanyipo. Our Nsamafo show us directly that the Akan people can't come from ancient Khanat. That's part of the oral tradition in Akwamu Mine, Amadokai Sifimu, the Akwamu nation in North America, coming directly from the Akwamu Nananom Nsamafo, ancestresses and ancestors. But then when we look at what the Akan people on the continent had to say, in their oral traditions, they talk about their migrations from ancient Nubia, Khanat, and Kamit to the western part of the continent. That's part of the royal traditions and oral traditions of Akan people on the continent. You can Google videos where Akan Queen Mother and others are talking about their migration from Ethiopia and Egypt to the western part of the continent as Akan people. So that's part of the oral tradition. We also talk about how we migrated not only to establish ancient Kamit, but also further north to establish civilization in the so-called Near East, in what will later be called Sumer and now called Iraq, as well as Elam, which is now called Iran. That's part of the oral tradition. But then when you look at the actual data, the anthropological data, the genetic data, the linguistic, the archaeological data, it all confirms these oral traditions. It simply corroborates these oral traditions. One of the easiest ways to see that is when you look, of course, at the language and you look at the ritual practice. The people established a 7-day week in Sumer. Our people migrated up there and carried the same Akan 7-day week. When you look at the 7-day week in Sumer, it's based on the sun, moon, and those 5 planets, and the deities that govern the sun, moon, and those 5 different planets. Each day of the week is named after these divinities. They have their own character, and people are named after these deities as well. It's the exact same 7-day system. So, before we get into some of the archaeological information, we could simply say, for example, if you look at the 7-day week in so-called Sumer or so-called Babylon, for example, Monday, which is the day of the moon, and we'll give you some linguistic information just to give you a snapshot of what's really going on. On Sunday is the day of the moon, Monday, the day of the moon, which is Moon Day. Monday, Moon Day. The name of the divinity of the moon in ancient Sumer is Nana. So they'll say the divinity of the moon is Nana. Monday. Now, is there a connection to the Akan tradition in that regard? If you look, for example, in the book African Spirituality on Becoming Ancestors, written by Anthony Ephraim Donkor, written back in 1997, dealing with the Akan tradition, Akan culture, and so forth, they will talk about rituals done at the new moon. When they talk about the rituals done at the new moon, he will talk about how the Akan people come outside, and when they see the new moon, they announce to the divinity of the new moon, and they call on him and say, Nana, yet I say we thank you for what you have done for us, and so forth, and they have different prayers when they invoke that divinity. So Akan people on the continent referring to the deity of the moon as Nana. When you look on the day of the moon, or Moon Day, or Monday in ancient Sumer, the name of the moon divinity is Nana. But also you'll find in a later dialect, the name of the moon divinity is Sing or Swing. It'll be spelled S-I-N or S-U-E-N. Sing or Swing. The name of the moon divinity, another name. Sometimes you see them combine the two, the ancient name, title Nana with Sing, or Nana Sing. They'll put Nana dash Sing because they're showing the ancient Sumer dialect, which is a quote-unquote non-Semitic dialect, and then the later Semitic dialect. So they'll have Nana. Sometimes the other charts will just say Sing or Swing, S-U-E-N or S-I-N. So one name is Nana. The Akan people refer to the moon divinity as Nana. The other name is Sing or Swing for the moon divinity. You look in the Akan language, another name for the moon is Esheng. Esheng being light, vibrant, luminous, the lustry or silvery light, luster of the moon divinity, and it's called Esheng. Esheng, a name of the moon. Nana, a name of the moon in Akan. Swing, a name of the moon in ancient Sumer. Nana, a name of the moon in ancient Sumer. We didn't get this from the Romans. We didn't get this from crackers. Only fools would believe that. We have the linguistic evidence as well as the ritual evidence to prove that. To give another example, if you look at the divinity of Friday, in ancient Sumer, the planet is called, of course, the planet itself, ancient Kamit, is Het-Heru, the divinity that governs that planet. The planet, whites and offspring, called Venus. In ancient Sumer, they will call the planet Inanna. Inanna, which is different from Nana, which is the moon, male moon divinity. Inanna is the mother divinity of the planet Inanna, so-called Venus. Of course, when you talk about Venus or Venu, comes Venus, comes from Benu, or the Benu bird and so forth, from ancient Kamit. But the divinity is Het-Heru, Het-Her in ancient Kamit is called Chet-Cher in Akan. That is her title in Akan. Her title in Akan is also Afi. So the divinity Afi is also called Cheche. In ancient Kamit, one of the titles of Het Heru is Afifi, but then her major title is Het Her. So Het Her and Afifi becomes Cheche and Afi in Akan. Same divinity. She is a mother divinity. Why is she a mother divinity? Het Her or Het Heru. Het means house and Heru is the divinity, the falcon divinity. So when you look at the Medusa, the hieroglyphic symbol, the symbol of the house, the sanctuary, the Het, and then inside of that house is the falcon divinity. So she's gestating the child divinity inside of her womb. Het Heru, also called Oshun in the Yoruba tradition, Azili and Vodun and so forth. Afi in Akan, she is the one who governs the sensual attraction that is the precursor to procreative activity, sexual activity. That sensual attraction, that magnetic attraction that draws the male and the female together, that draws the physical aspect of male and female together, as well as the sperm and ovum of the male and female together, pulls them together, that magnetic attraction we need, that sensory attraction that we need to come together so that we can reproduce. The sensual attraction that is the precursor to sexual activity, procreative activity, as well as the replenishment of its harmony. And the replenishment of that harmony, of that harmonious sensual attraction is what we will refer to as pleasure. So they will talk about Oshun or Het Heru being the goddess of love and everything else, and sexuality and everything else, but it's technically talking about the sensual attraction, that magnetism that draws the male and female together. When you have a magnet, two magnets on the table and the opposite polarities are facing, you put them close enough together and they jump together, because that's an attraction, a balance of male and female, that sensual attraction that draws the two entities together. Het Heru governs that energetic expression. She's the force that draws us together. That sensual attraction, the precursor to procreative activity, and the replenishment of its harmony, which is pleasure, she governs that. So it facilitates reproductive activity. You see the fallopian tubes in the female, governed by Het Heru, the epididymis in the male, which is the parallel structure in the male, governed by Het Heru as well inside of the male. And the fallopian tubes, of course, carry the ovum, the eggs, and everything. That's the key. Connected to reproduction and so forth, the fallopian tubes are the Het Heru, the house of Heru, the little house, the sanctuary where the egg will be. When you see the Het, the house, and the little falcon inside of the house, this is what we're dealing with. So she governs gestation as well. Because she's governing gestation and she's a mother divinity with those fallopian tubes, that's part of the mothering aspect. Of course, the birth canal is also part of the mothering aspect, and that's governed by Offset within the fallopian tubes and so forth that carry those ovum or ova. That's a mothering aspect as well, so she's a mother divinity. So when you look at her in ancient Sumer, she's called Inanna. When you look at the Akan language, the term for father is Eja. The term for mother is Inna. So if you see your father, somebody's father, you say that's his Eja, that's his father. You see their mother, you say that's his Inna, his mother. So the mother divinity amongst the 7-day week, divinity energy is Inanna in ancient Sumer. The term for mother in Akan is Inna in our language. Just like you have Nana for the moon in ancient Sumer, you have Nana for the moon in Akan. You have Inanna for the great mother divinity in ancient Sumer for the same planetary deity of Fida or Friday. Inanna, you have Inna for mother in Akan. When you look at the moon, once again, the term Joda, Da means day, Joda, the day of Jo, that's the term for Monday or moon day in Akan, Joda, the Da or day of the Abosom Jo. You have Ajo, male, Ajua, female. We talked about the term in ancient Kamit, Ya or Yao, I-A-H or I-A-H, Ya or Yao in ancient Kamit is the term for the moon divinity. Yaut is the female moon divinity. But Yao being the moon divinity, when you get to Coptic, it's spelled I-O-O-H in the Coptic dialect, the Late Kemet dialect. So Yao becomes Yo in Coptic. Yo in Coptic becomes Jo in Akan. Jo Da, the Da day of Jo, the moon. That's Moon Day. And people born on that day is Ajo or Quadjo for male, Ajoa for female. Quadjo means Qua, the servant of the divinity, Jo, the moon. Ajoa is the servant of the moon divinity, female. Ajoa is the female. Quadjo or Kojo is the male. Joda, the day, Da of Jo, the day of the moon. Jo being the Coptic dialect for the term moon. Jo coming from Jiao in ancient Kamit. So we have the same name for the divinity, the same language, the same functions, the same entity in creation. And we can go through that for all of the days of the week. All of them match up, not only with the Akan language, the ancient Kamit and Khanit, but also the Akan language to ancient Sumer. Same deities, same names, same planet, sun, moon, or planet, same function. So once again, that proves culturally and ritually we're the same people. Now let's look archaeologically for that same information, which simply corroborates what we already know. When our Nsamanfo, our ancestresses and ancestors tell us exactly who we are, we already know this is accurate. So when you get some genetic information, you get some archaeological information, you get some linguistic information, you get some anthropological information, all it does is simply, quite naturally, corroborate the reality of who we are. So we don't look to the linguistic and anthropological and archaeological information and genetic information for proof, because we already have the proof. Our culture is superior, so we have direct knowledge. When the Abosom possess our people, we have direct knowledge of who they are. So we have a superior science. The other fields of endeavor are inferior science. All they can do is give you aspects of information. We have the full information coming directly from the source. And the whites and their offspring cannot communicate with the source. They can't communicate with the Abosom, so the best they can do is feel around and skirt around the edges and gather some information that points to the same reality. But we have source information. And when we get the source information directly from the Abosom, of course, any linguistic data we look at is going to corroborate that. Any genetic information we look at is going to corroborate that because it's reality. So we're not, grasping for straws. It's reality. So let's look at these different fields, so-called fields of endeavor, that simply corroborate what we're talking about. Now, we posted a link to one specific article, and you can find this information in different areas as well. This specific article, The Kushite Spread of Haplogroup R1 M173 from Africa to Eurasia by Dr. Clyde Winters from Uthman Danfodio Institute in Chicago. So the abstract of the paper, in this paper we discuss the role of the Kushites, which is just another term for ancient Khanit people, quote-unquote Nubian people, in the spread of R1 M173. The human Y chromosome haplogroup R1 M173 is mainly found in Okra, Africa. Haplogroup R1 M173 is the pristine form of haplogroup R, talking about the Y chromosomal haplogroup, male DNA haplogroup. In Africa, researchers have detected frequencies as high as 95% among sub-Saharan Africa. The phylogenetic, craniometric, textual, historical, and linguistic evidence support the demic diffusion of Niger-Congo, Nilo-Saharan carriers of R1 M173 from Africa to Eurasia between 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. So now we get into some of the information. We don't have to read, of course, the entire article, but we put the link to the article in the chat room so you can get to it. So first they have an introduction talking about archaeogenetics, the use of genetics, archaeology, and linguistics to explain and discuss the origin and spread of Homo sapiens sapiens. And then they talk about how in this paper they will discuss that related to the specific information. Researchers have outlined 2 possible out-of-Africa events in the past 40,000 years. Although these out-of-Africa events occurred during prehistory, the classical writers of Greece and Rome discussed a recent migration of people from Africa into Eurasia. This African population was called Kushites, of course, that's Khanitu, Nubians, and so forth. So, as they're going through this information, we'll skip down to the most salient point. As we said earlier, in the oral traditions of our people, Akan people come from ancient Khanit, Nubia. We migrated into what will later become Kamit and settled and established that civilization. And of course, we did our publication, Akpamu Jamain, and the origin and meaning of the name Kamit, showing that the name Kamit and Kamit people, Kamat people. You'll find that in the Akan language as well, including just the Medutu, the hieroglyph of the burning piece of charcoal, meaning calm or black and so forth. You find that burning piece of charcoal. Also, in the term for the Kama people amongst the Akan who came out of the larger Akan ethnic group, the exact same process. So we went into detail about that. But in our oral traditions, we say we come from ancient Khanit, Nubia. We went up further north to establish Kamit, but we also went further into the Near East and established the civilization that will later be called Sum. So now you look here in this information. The literature provides us with a critical examination of the distribution of R1M173, which is that particular haplogroup. It presents a genetic pattern of this haplogroup from Africa to Eurasia, and the dispersal of a significant African male contribution to Eurasia in the past 4,000 years. The pristine form of R1M173, that particular haplogroup, Y chromosomal, is found only in Africa. Pristine form. Haplogroup R1M173 is ancestral to RP25 and other Eurasian downstream markers. The Eurasian R1b Y chromosome has the M269 mutation. The RP25 haplogroup has been found in Europe, West, and East Asia. So when people get all excited, which you'll find about the R1b Y chromosomal haplogroup and that being connected to Eurasian, the R1M173 is ancestral to that. So, Figure 1 shows the frequency of R1, and they have some figures here, and some charts and everything, graphs and everything in the articles that you'll see. Frequency of R1M173 in Africa and Eurasia. In the frequency of Y chromosome R1M173 in Africa, the range between 7 and 95% and averages 39.5%, and they give those different averages. So let's scroll down. You'll see the chart when you check out the article. Now, the majority of West Africans formerly lived just below Egypt and Nubia before they moved westward into Cameroon, the Niger Valley, and Senegambian region. This part of Africa was inhabited by the Kushite people in ancient times. The Kushite people are usually associated with the C group civilization of Nubia and Egypt. The center of their civilization was situated first in Wawat, southern Kamit, and later Kerma as well, which is in quote-unquote Sudan, Nubia, and so forth. The majority of West Africans speak languages that belong to the Niger-Congo group of languages. The Niger-Congo group of languages originated in Nubia and were spoken by some of the Kushites. So we're talking about thousands of years ago. Our people originated, according to this genetic data, south of Kamit, in the regions of what is now southern Kamit as well as northern Sudan. Of course, there's information that came out recently where they found a 70,000-year-old settlement, the first settlement of a city. 70,000 years ago, that's the earliest settlement of a city anywhere in the world. 70,000 years ago in northern Sudan, so-called Nubia, we're talking about the same region. Now, Niger-Congo, the homeland, was the vicinity of the Upper Nile Valley. He's talking about one of the researchers who believes that the Western migration from Nubia began 5,000 years ago. He's talking about one of the researchers there. This was the center of the C group civilization. He talked about this theory of Welmer's in 1971, discussing the dogs of the Niger-Congo speakers and the Basenji dogs that live in Sudan and Uganda. They were formerly recorded on Egyptian monuments. The Basenji dog is the Egyptian hieroglyphic sign for dogs, but then that dog ends up in Liberia. And he talks about the Basenji related to the Liberian Basenji breed of the Capel and Loma people of Liberia. He believes that the Mendi people took these dogs with them on their migration westward. This is how they ended up. So he has a whole piece about that. But that anthropological data that they were talking about in 1971 ends up being corroborated decades later with the the mapping of the human genome, and corroborates that same information. So he talks more about the anthropological data, but then you get to the linguistic data. Linguistic research makes it clear that there is a close relationship between the Niger-Congo superlanguage family and the Nilo-Saharan languages spoken in the Sudan. So he talks about researchers who have discussed that, describe the African languages using lexical evidence, lexical items, talking about the words that you find in the dictionaries and so forth in the language, lexical evidence to include the Nilo-Saharan and Niger-Congo languages into a superfamily called Sudanic, using morphological and lexical similarities, the morphological structure, the consonantal structure of the languages, and then the lexical similarities, meaning the definitions of terms. Gregerson indicated that these languages belong to a macrophylum he named Congo-Saharan. So previously, the Nilo-Saharan languages of the people living near the Nile and around Sahara, and then the Niger-Congo languages connected to the people of West and Central Africa. Previously, the White Nile Spring would separate those two and say there's the Niger-Congo group of languages, Nilo-Saharan group of languages. Some are West Central Africa, the others are East Africa. But then when they began to do the examination, investigation, comparisons linguistically, they started to realize, of course, what we already know. Our people said we come from ancient Khanit, and then we spread out. Some people went north, some people went east, some people went west. And, of course, some people went south, but we know who we are. When they began to study these languages, and more importantly, when our people began to study these languages, but he's talking about the White Nile Spring right now, they began to realize, of course, that the Niger-Congo language phylum, the Nilo-Saharan language phylum are actually related, and they came up with a new term, Congo-Saharan, which reaches from West and Central Africa all the way across the east. They're all part of the same super language family of macrophylum. And they named it Congo-Saharan for their own research purpose. Research by Blench, that was by Hain and Nurse in the year so-called 2000. Research by Blench reached the same conclusion, and he named this superfamily Niger-Saharan. The close relationship, that's another researcher researching the same linguistic type. The close relationship between Niger-Congo and Nilo-Saharan suggests an intimate relationship formerly existed between the diverse speakers of these language families, probably in Nubia. Genetic evidence. So he talked about the anthropological evidence. He talked about the archaeological evidence of the C group, Nubians, and so forth. Talked about the linguistic data. Now he gets into the genetic evidence support the Upper Nile origin, talking about South Kamit and into northern Sudan, origin for the Niger-Congo speaker. Rosa and others, 2007, noted that while most Mendi and Balanta, of course in West Africa, carry the E38M2 gene, there are a number of Felupe, Jola, Papel, Fulbi, which is Fulani people, and Mendi carry the M3B, M35 gene, the same as many people in the Sudan, which is ancient Nubia, Khanit. In addition to haplogroup E3, we also find some carriers of haplogroup R1, M173 in Egypt and the Sudan. Then they show in figure 2, they show the majority of the carriers of Y chromosome M173 in Africa speak Niger-Congo language. This genetic evidence makes it clear that R1M173 was probably carried by some C group speakers, C group Nubians, before they migrated out of the upper Nile Valley region. Wilmers, as we talked about earlier, proposed an upper Nile Valley homeland for the Niger-Congo speakers. He claims that they remained intact until 5,000 years ago. This view is supported by linguistic and genetic. The Greco-Roman writers make it clear that there were two Kushite empires, one in Asia and the other group in the era we call the Sudan. The Greek writer Homer alluded to the two Kushite empires when he wrote A Race Divided, whom the sloping rays, the rising and the setting sun surveys. The Greek traveler, historian Herodotus claimed that he derived this information from the Egyptians. The Kushites were also called Ethiopians. The term Ethiopian comes from the two Greek terms Ethios, burnt, and ops, face. As a result, Ethiopians means burnt faces. Herodotus and Homer describe these Ethiopians as the most just of men, the favorites of the gods. Classical literature makes it clear that the region from Egypt to India was called by the name Ethiopia. He goes into some of the other information by the writers of those, quote-unquote classical writers and so forth, showing that they were saying the same things that the recent genetic and linguistic and archaeological and anthropological data has corroborated. He gets into the Elamite language, people of ancient Elam, which is now Iran. The black people of ancient Elam is closely related to the Dravidian languages and Niger-Congo languages. Dravidian talking about ancient black India. So the genetic, linguistic, and archaeological evidence pointing to the African origin of the Dravidian speakers in India. Research suggests that the Dravidian-speaking people may have belonged to the C group Nubians. People spread culture from Nubia into Arabia, Iran, and India, as evidenced by the presence of black and red ware, talking about the pottery and so forth, the black and red distinct pottery. Although the Egyptians preferred the cultivation of wheat, many ancient C group people were agro-pastoral people who cultivated millet and sorghum and raised cattle. It was the Dravidians who probably took millet to India. The C group people used the common black and red ware, talking about the pottery, that has been found from the Sudan across Southwest Asia and the Indian subcontinent all the way to China. The earliest use of this black-red ware was during the Amratian period, 4,000 to quote-unquote 3,500 BC. The users of the black-red ware were usually called Kushites. Then they show in Figure 4 the Kushite expansion from Africa to Asia. When you get into the black and red ware, of course, we're talking about the black land and the red land, the connection between Asar, Kam-Ur, the great black one, Set, Desert, the great red one, and so forth. When you look, as we talked about in one of our broadcasts and publications, in the Akan tradition, we have that same sacred color symbolism amongst the people themselves. We have the Oyoko Koko, which is the red Oyoko people, the Oyoko Tuntun, which is the black Oyoko people. You have the blacks and the reds in the Akan tradition, in the Akan clan. Energy that governs the divinity that governs them and that manifests in the phenotype and their temperament as well. So the dark brown people with black undertones, dark brown people with red undertones, the blacks and the reds. That black and red ware is connected to ancient Khanit, Nubia, and you'll also see in the drums, you see the drums in Akan culture for specific purposes. They have a checker pattern of black and red. In certain ritual occasions, you will see the people dressed in black and red, that motif, all throughout the culture. Now, he gets into some more information about the Dravidian languages and so forth, getting some of that, and he's talking about the black and red ware all throughout South India. Now, when he talks about the legacy of the Kushites in Asia, it's evident in the use of their ethnonym as a place name characterized by the name Kush. Of course, that term Kush has nothing to do with the Bible. You see that in the language, the Medusa of the ancient Kamit, as a title of a portion of ancient Khanit or Nubia. It's spelled Kush or Kash, different way. So he talks about the Kushites, when they migrated from Middle Africa to Asia, continued to call themselves Kushites or Kush people. This is most evident in the place names and the names of deities. The Kassites chief rulers of Iran occupied the central part of the Zagros. The Kushite god was called Kashushu or Kashu, which was also the name of the people. The KSH name element is also found in India. For example, the Kush Kintai was a name applied to the ancient Dravidian kingdom of South India. Let's not forget that the kings of Sumer were often referred to as the kings of Kush. The major Kushite tribe in Central Asia was called the Kushana. The Kushan of China were the Ta Hueti, or the great lunar race. Of course, you're talking about the Ta Seti and so forth. Along the salt swamp, there was a state called Kushi of Tibet. The city of Kusan was situated in the direction of Kushan, which was located in the western part of the Gansu province of China. So he goes into some more information about that. Then Anatolia was occupied by many Kushite groups, including the Kashkaz and Hatti. The Hatti, like the Dravidian-speaking people, were probably related to the Hatti, probably members of the Tehenu tribe. The Tehenu were composed of various ethnic groups. When you look at the people of west of Kamit, in northern Africa, so-called Libya, Tehenu and the Temehu, what sometimes people say Tamahu and so forth. What's very important about the spelling of the name Tehenu is the symbol, the tethered rope, then the symbol for the H, the symbol for the N. So the symbol for the tethered rope, very often people say that's the T, the T sound, or like a TJ, the Ch sound, then the symbol for the H and the N. Some people think it's Tehenu or Chehenu, but they don't know the vowel. But there's another pronunciation of that tethered rope is the K sound. So the T sound, the Ch sound, or the K sound. Just like in Akan, you have the T sound, the sound, and the K sound. So you have the Jamine people, also called the Kama people. In ancient Kamit, that tethered rope can be a Ch sound or a K sound, just like the CH for chronology or chrome or character, but then the CH is also in change and check and, different names with the Ch sound. So Ch and K, and also Ch. When you look at the tethered rope and you look at the term TH or T with the N, Khan, that means to count, to calculate, or reckon. So we know in that particular spelling that tethered rope is the K sound, because we know that in the Akan language, Khan means to count, calculate, or reckon. In the Medusu, when you see the tethered rope and then the N and it says Khan, it means to count, to calculate, or reckon. So that tethered rope has the K sound. When you see that tethered rope, Medut, or symbol first, and then the H, symbol for the H, and the symbol for the N, it's not the Tehen people, the Tehenu people. That tethered rope is actually the K sound. It's not the Kehenu people, it's the Kahanu people, the Khan people. How do we know that's what it is? Those Libyans of the Western Desert, those Nubians of the Western Desert, west of northern Kamit. How do we know it's Khan people? Because Khan or Kahan people is the name of the people, is the name of the land, but then Kahan, spelled the exact same way with a different determinative, means luminous, bright, scintillating light. We know that it must be Kahan, the spelling and the pronunciation, because in the Akan language, as we said, the third definition of Khan, one means first, foremost, from the beginning, Khan. The second means to count, calculate, or reckon, Khan. The third definition for Khan means luminous, bright, brilliant. So again, you have Khan meaning the name of the people, the name of the land, but Kahan also means scintillating light, brilliant light. It is also a name for the blue fans, the glazed blue fans, the brilliant, bright, shining blue fans that was used all over so-called Libya, or the Kahan land of the Kahan people. These are the C group Nubians who lived in the western desert, west of Kamit. Sometimes they were allies with people of Kamit, sometimes they were fighting. These are the same people. It's like in Akan culture, you have the Asante, the Fanti, the Akwamu, the Denchera, different Akan groups. Some of them are in harmony with one another. Some of them are fighting one another. The Asante and the Fanti waged war against one another for decades, but they're all Akan people. These exact same Akan people you find in ancient Khanit and Kamit. Some of them were allies. Sometimes they were fighting at different times, and sometimes they would come back together and ally against the whites in Arab Spring at different times as well. So the Kahanu people, it's not the Tehenu people, it's the Kehenu or Kahanu people. These are Akan people, the ancient sea group Nubia. And we did an entire broadcast on Ebibri people, which is what Akan people call black people. We say Ebibri. The Bri is the Bri people, the Berber people. We went into detail about that, proving that the reason Akan people call ourselves Ebibri or Bri people, the Berber or Bri people, Bre people. The reason we call ourselves that is because we're a component of those ancient sea group Nubians who live west of ancient Kamit, as well as south of ancient Kamit. The people of the blue veil, the Tuareg, Berbers, and so forth, the people of the blue veil who have the blue dye on their skin. We have that same cosmology and symbolism in our Akan culture. The Ebibri Shefo, the people who are the dyers in the blue cloth. And the Ebibi time is the blue cloth, and the Ebibri Shefo are the people who dye the blue cloth. And the Ebibri Fo is what we call ourselves. We call ourselves Khan, but we also call ourselves Ebibri Fo, Ebibri people. So we went into detail about that, showing that these ancient, quote-unquote, Berbers, these Libyan Berbers, the black Berbers before the whites in Arab Spring invaded North Africa, we showed an image of Osorkan II in western Libya, the Berber king and so forth, west of ancient Kamit, showing himself with blue skin, his arms and legs blue, but of course his face and everything, the regular brown color, just like the Tuareg Berbers, Afrika people, Akraka people, and so forth, have the blue veil, blue clothing, and so forth, and the dye and the blue skin and everything else. We talked about the symbolism of the blue and the black. Amen with blue skin, Amen with black skin. Bri meaning black. In Akan, Bri meaning blue as well, showing the connection between the blue and the black. Amen and Amenet. Amen showing itself with black skin at nighttime, the blackness of the sky, the infinity of the sky, the infinity of Amen during the daytime. His skin is blue, the sky is the infinity. And that's the skin of the great infinite divinity, Amen and Amenet. So the union between the blue and the black converges in the term Bri, meaning black, Bri, meaning blue in Akan, Ebibri, Shefo, the dyers in the blue cloth, Ebibri Fo, the name that we call ourselves. All of that we dealt with in the broadcast on the Ebibri Fo, Tuareg, Fula, Akan people dealing with the ancient Nubians of that region. So when he talks about the Tehenu, it's the Kahenu people. We have the proper vocalization that we still use to this day with the exact same meaning, bright, luminous, but also the blue fans, the sacred blue color. Now, when he talks about the Tehenu, which is really the Kahenu, were comprised of various ethnic groups. First, it was our people, then later the whites in Arab Spring invaded North Africa, just like the whites in Arab Spring invaded Kamit, and now you have white Arabs calling themselves Egyptians. Of course, they are not Egyptians. The whites who invaded ancient North Africa were not the original inhabitants. That's idiotic. Our people were there before white people existed on the planet Earth. White people invaded much later, and then they started calling themselves Berbers and North Africans and Libyans and everything else. They are not that. The only reason that some of them will even have a haplogroup related to that is because some of our people foolishly mix our blood with the whites in their offspring, and as soon as a black male has sexual copulates with a white female, then that Y chromosome DNA goes into that white female and to the child, of course. That child's a mulatto. If he marries, another white female, they have a son, then that son's very pale. That son grows up, marries a white female. That son of that union is very pale. A few generations down, you would never know that there was a black grandfather anywhere in the place. But the DNA of that black grandfather will run through that entire male line all the way for the next 1,000 years. So they will see that there's a haplogroup that these white Berbers have that they all share coming from an original black ancestor. So this is where that comes from. Okay, so one of the Khanitu tribes was identified by the Egyptians as the Hatu or Hatu. The Hatu may represent the Hatti tribe and so forth, so he gets into a little bit of information about that. So, but we want to go a little bit further. He says we can use craniometric data to understand ancient population history. The craniometric evidence indicates that a process of endemic diffusion of Kushite people into Mesopotamia and Anatolia between 5,000 to 4,000 years ago. Craniometric data sets support a continuous dispersal modal of sub-Saharan Africans from Africa to Eurasia between 5,000 to 4,000 years ago. There's a positive relationship between crania, talking about the skulls, crania from Africa and Eurasia. The archaeologist Duelafoy, 2004, and Hansberry, 1981, maintains that there was a sub-Saharan strain in Persia. These researchers maintain it was evident that an Ethiopian dynasty ruled Elam from perusal of its statuary of the royal family and members of the army. Then they noted that the textual evidence and iconography make it clear that the Elamites were Africans and part of the Kushite Federation. Clear that the Elamites at Susa were sub-Saharan African. So he goes into some more detail about that, talking about Elam, which is Persia, today's Iran. The relationship between the Elamite and Mende languages is interesting. He talks about the relationship between the Anatolia populations and the Niger-Congo speakers. The Mende languages belong to the Niger-Congo superfamily of languages. This suggests that the Garamante spoke a Niger-Congo language. The founders of civilization on Crete were the Garamante. The Minoans called themselves Keftiu. The Egyptians recorded some Keftiu names in their hieroglyphs. These names are common clan names among the Mende-speaking people. The founders of civilization on Crete being the Garamante. When you look at the Garamante and you look in West Africa, Empire of Ghana, and then later after that empire, then the Mende-speaking people take over, and then you have the Empire of Mali, and then later Songhai and so forth. We find that the Akan and the Mende-speaking people are related, closely related. Even within the cosmology of the Mende-speaking people, they include the Akan people as part of their cosmology, the 44 sacred tribes and so forth. And then later the Akan people move further south. Because of Muslim invasions, they move further south away from the ancient empire of Khanit, the reestablished Akan civilization near the forest belt. Some of the Mende-speaking people move up into the Bandiagara cliffs like the Dogon to get away from that Muslim nonsense. But they're closely related genetically, linguistically, and so forth. Garamante people, you hear the term Garamante in ancient times, then that term has specific resonance with Mende-speaking people. You have the Guramanche people, of course, Burkina Faso, part of the Mende-speaking people, but then within the Akan language, you have Kuramanse. Kuramanse is part of the Akan language. You see Kuramanse is one of the major ports in the Ghana region where the Akan people are, and because of that major port in the Fanti-speaking area called Kuramanse, when our people were enslaved and forced from those regions and forced in North Central South America because they came from the Akan region and from that port called Kuramanse, then whenever you're reading about enslavement, and they talk about Akan-speaking people who were enslaved, whether it's in the Caribbean or in North America and so forth, they throw them all under the title of either Akan speakers, Akan people, or they call them Kuramanti, and they'll spell it Coromantee, Koromantes. Sometimes they spell it with a K and so forth. But the reason why they use that term Koromanti, coming from the region of Koromanti in Ghana amongst the Akan-speaking people, and they refer to, when you hear Koromanti, slave logs and so forth, and the ships and the places where we were dropped off, they're talking about Akan speakers. So they'll say, for example, Okumpo Kwabena, so-called Denmark VC, was Kuramanti. When you look in Jamaica, they will talk about their language, the particular language that they held on to, the Akan there, they would call it Kuramanti. When you look in Suriname, the people who practice Winti, the Akan tradition, when the Winti or the Akan deities come forward and the Akan ancestresses and ancestors come forward to possess, they speak the Akan language still when they possess people. And the people in Suriname will call that language the Kuramanti language, and those are the Kuramanti spirits, because they also deal with spirits that come from Dahomey and speak Fon and Ebe and so forth. So when those spirits come forth and those Vodou come forth, then they speak their traditional Fong Bay and Ebe Bay language. But when the Akan ancestral spirits possess and come forth during ritual, they speak the Akan language, and the people say, these are the Kuramanti spirits. That Kuramanti goes back to the ancient Garamanti, which is talking about the founders of civilization, as he said, in Crete and so forth. So we just need to put that in there. He doesn't mention that in the article, but we put that information in. All right, so when you scroll down some more, he's talking about that, the Kuramanti and all of that. And then he talks about the skeletons come from Ilion and Troy, which I discussed, founded by the Kushites, and he cites some of his work related to the West African, Niger, Congo, and Kerma Kushite population. So the conclusion of this particular article, the phylogenetic profile of R-M173 supports an ancient migration of Kushites from Africa to Eurasia, as suggested by the classical writers. They outline the spread of haplogroup R from Nubia into Asia and West Africa. This expansion of an ancient Kushite population probably took place during the Neolithic period. The accumulated classical literature, archaeological, craniometric, genetic, and linguistic evidence suggests a genetic relationship between the Kushites of Africa and Kushites in Eurasia that cannot be explained by microevolutionary mechanisms. The phylogeographic profile of R1M173 supports this ancient migration of Kushites from Africa to Eurasia, as suggested by the classical writer. The expansion of Kushites into Eurasia probably took place over 4,000 years ago. And then he talks about the linguistic evidence, the distribution of Y chromosomes, specific haplogroups, and everything else. So that, of course, is important. We already talked about anthropologically or culturally, ritually, the nature of the 7-day week connected to the Abosom, forces that govern the sun, moon, planets, and so forth, how we are named after them, how that comes into being as part of our cosmology. Before our spirits enter into the womb, we go to Nyamewa, Nyame, the great mother, great father. We are assigned specific deities that govern our head. Then we are sent into the womb and we are born into the world on the day governing that divinity. We talk about the planets themselves, even the color of the planets encoded within the name of the divinity. We can see the colors of the planets, the bluish green for Yah and Abba from Earth. Of course, their sacred colors carry that, the reddish color of the planet, Benna, Abena, and of course the sacred color of those deities is red, and their energy is that red, fiery kind of energy and so forth. That is true of all the different divinities of the different days of the week. The same is true in ancient Sumer. Our people migrated to ancient Sumer, established that 7-day week. The exact same 7-day week with the exact same deities, with the exact same names, with the exact same functions as they exist in the Akan culture today. Why is it in the Akan culture today? Did the Akan learn it later on? No, we've had it from the beginning, because the Akan people are the ancient Khanit people. We are the ancient Nubians, C group Nubians and so forth, that were in ancient South Kamit and North, so-called Sudan or Khanit, thousands of years ago, over 10,000 years ago. Some of our people migrated north and settled Kamit. Prior to Kamit being called Kamit and Tameri, it was called Khan, or the Khanit land, the land of the interior, the beginning land. Later it became known as Kamit and Tameri. But there's another final piece to that. We know about the caravan routes between ancient Sudan, southern Kamit and Sudan up, of course, through the Nile River, the Hapi River. Of course, if there was a caravan and they're bringing goods and so forth back and forth, they would go up the river. They could sail up the river, and that goes directly north all the way to the Watch or the Great Green, which is the Mediterranean Sea, and takes people into those different areas in Eurasia. Of course, further east through the so-called Red Sea, that's a route as well through the port of Khanit, which is so-called Punt, which is where Eritrea and Djibouti are and so forth, all the way up into the so-called Persian Gulf and everything else. But there's another route, another caravan route that people typically don't focus too much on, and it's directly related to the discussion. Give me 1 second. The other caravan route that was used by the people of ancient Khanit thousands and thousands of years is that parallel caravan route to take goods from the south up to the north, from southern Kamit and northern Khanit, northern Nubia, southern Kamit, all the way up north to Watch or to reach the Great Green, the Mediterranean, and the lands in that area. That was the parallel caravan route in the western desert, west of the Hapi Valley, west of the river. There are a string of oases that dot the western desert. And when you look at the string of oases that dot the western desert, you see that these depressions in the western desert were places where people, there was lush greenery and so forth, with these, oases in the desert. They support population, thousands of people. They still support thousands of people in these populations today. So you have a great deal of desert, and then you come upon an oasis. Thousands of people are living in the oasis. There's water, there's greenery, everything else. That's a stopping point. Then people go to the next caravan route. They move up to the next oasis. So you have these different oases in the western desert. So give me 1 second. I want to pull this information up so you can just see, give you a quick little link of the western oases in Kamit. And there was a particular document that I had up earlier. Pull it up real quick. And you can find a chart of those, even if you Google Western Oases, Egypt, desert. You can find all kinds of information, maps of the Western Desert, oases, and so forth. And in fact, well, I'll pull it up in a minute. It'll come up in a minute. But for example, you have the Dakla or Dakila Oasis. You have the Siwa Oasis. You have the Baharia Oasis. You have the Karga Oasis. You have these different oases in the Western Desert that our people have been migrating through for thousands of years, parallel, miles away from, hundreds of miles away from hundreds of miles west of the river itself. So we will go through these caravan routes. These are the C group, quote unquote, Nubian, in South Kamit, North Khanit. Prior to the desertification of the region, previously the so-called Sahara Desert was an aquatic region. Thousands of years ago, 10,000 years ago, it was an aquatic region, supporting all kinds of life, teeming with life and so forth. About somewhere around 7,000+ years ago, the desertification took place. It started drying up, and the people had to go to the riverine areas and the oases in order to survive. So it turns into this huge Saharan desert as we see it today. Prior to that, however, our people were living in this aquatic region. We were also going to where these oases are now. They were still in existence and so forth. And our people were living in the western, quote-unquote, region of Kamit. Before it became a desert, we were living in the aquatic region west of Kamit. When it became a desert, we were living in the oasis region all along the western portion of the country, of the region. These are ancient Khanit people as well as other other Afro-Akani people, but we're talking about the Akan people now, ancient Khanit people living in these areas. Some of the Akan people living south of Kamit and west of Kamit, they stayed south and they stayed west. Some of them never went up into northern Kamit to live. Just like some of our people living in Mississippi, some migrate up north over the past 100 years and migrate and live in St. Louis, and some move to Chicago, some move to Detroit, some move to other areas. But then a lot of the people remain in the south and they never moved to Chicago, never moved to Detroit. Some of our people living in Khanit, Nubia, southern Kamit, and west of Kamit remained in those areas for over 10,000 years and still live there today. Some of our people went north and went up the river and established settlements up the river. Some of those people continued to go north and went up into the Near East through taking that route through the river and along the river, establishing these different cities like Ta'apet, Thebes, and so forth, and Min-Nefer, so-called Memphis, and Anu, so-called later, around Cairo today and so forth, these different regions. And then some went up into the Near East, established ancient Canaan, which is Canaan, established ancient Sumer, Elam, and so forth. That's how some of those people, some of the Khanit people, ancient Akan people, got to the so-called Near East through that route. Others of our people who remained south, but also lived in the western, quote-unquote, desert. Once it became a desert, they remained there in those oases, but they still had caravans. And they would go through the western desert, going through these caravans and getting all the way up to the Watch or the so-called Mediterranean, and they took that route from southern Kamit, northern Khanit, Nubia, all the way up to the Near East, and then they went into the lands of the Near East, never having lived in ancient Kamit. So then the question becomes, well, the Akan people have a 7-day week. Why didn't they have a 7-day week in Kamit? Because some of those people never went into Kamit. They were living in the Western Desert. They live in the Western Desert now. Some of those people who live, the black Berbers and Tuaregs who live west of Kamit and further west, west of, even west of the Libyan Desert and so forth, these are the exact same people who've been living there for over 10,000 years. We're not talking about the white people who invaded and polluted some of the blood surface. We're talking about the black Tuareg, black Berbers who still live there, still wearing the blue and so forth, been living there for over 10,000 years. Never took up residence in Kamit, still worshiping the same divinity. When you look at the Berber cosmology, they worship Amen, Heru, Asar, Set, Aset, Nebethet, Ra, Ra'et, since ancient times, all the way up to today for those who have not become Islamized and corrupted with Islam. And some of them, even those who become corrupted with Islam, they still practice aspects of their traditional culture as a foundation, with Islam overlaying that. So those same people have lived west of Kamit all along. Those same people, they have a 12-month calendar akin to the 12-month calendar of Kamit, but then they also have a 7-day week. That 7-day week did not come from the Romans. It comes from the exact same ancient Akan practice that we've had for thousands of years, that we carried up into ancient Sumer and established that 7-day week that we always had connected to the deities that govern the sun, moon, and the various planets. And we carried that into Sumer. When the whites and their offspring invaded Sumer, they learned about the 7-day week, and then they incorporated that eventually into their own practice. And then they continue from that point on. The Romans didn't always have a 7-day week. They were using an 8-day market week. And then later on, they switched to a 7-day week. But thousands of years before Romans existed, we already established that 7-day week because we brought it from ancient Khanit, south of Kamit and west of Kamit. So we talked about in one of our posts, we talked about the region of Nabta Playa. Nabta Playa is south and west of Kamit. And before we go forward, we just want to say there's a couple of minutes left in the broadcast. We'll go a little bit beyond 11 o'clock. If you want to listen beyond 11 o'clock, you must call in because if you don't call in within the next minute and a half online, the broadcast will cut off. But the people who are on the phone line, they'll still be able to hear after 11 o'clock. But if you're not on the phone line by 11, it'll cut off. You won't be able to hear. So the call-in number is 657-383-0635. It's on the site, 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635. You have about a little bit over a minute to call in so you can get on the phone to complete. If not, I say for tuning in. And if you support the work that we are doing, please go to the Nhoma page on our website, the publications page on our website. Support those books, the softcover books. We will be posting an event notification for our event coming up this coming December 22nd on the first full day of the Nain observance, the winter solstice. So let's get back to this information. Nabta Playa. We brought this up in one of our posts in relation to this information. It's in the so-called Nubian desert, about 800 kilometers south of modern-day Cairo, about 100 kilometers west of Abosom in southern Kamit. Many archaeological sites. There are a number of different things that are important about Nabta Playa. Thousands of years ago, as we said, before this region was a desert region, it was a savanna. They had buffalo, giraffes, antelope, gazelle. Around the 10th millennium, so-called BC, about 12,000 years ago, it began to receive more rainfall, filling a lake. Early people were attracted to the area, and so forth. Now, but later on, thousands of years ago, desertification took place, and it started, becoming a desert. But when you go back to about 10,000, well, actually about 12,000 years ago, you see that they had a high-level organization. They had a large society, and there are a number of different things that were taking place in them. They had above-ground and below-ground stone construction over 10,000 years ago. Villages designed in pre-planned arrangements, deep wells that held water throughout the year. The digging deep well, construction that's above ground and below ground, and systematically designed village settlement, city. Now, the other piece that's very important about Nabta Playa is their calendar circle. A huge calendar circle, these megalithic monuments that predate so-called Stonehenge. They have a calendar with these huge megalithic stones, tracking the solstices, the equinoxes, Sa, Orion, as well as Sapatit, Sirius, and so forth, important celestial bodies. They had an ancient calendar, really the oldest calendar yet to be found in the world, 10,000+ years ago. And a lot of people start speculating about that, and of course the crackers try to say it's aliens, all kinds of nonsense. But the key is, it goes back, they want to try to make it earlier than it really is. For example, in 2007, article by a team of University of Colorado archaeoastronomers and archaeologists responded to the work of Brophy and Rosen, in particular their claims for an alignment with Sirius in 6088 and other alignments which they dated to 6270, saying that these dates were about 1,500 years earlier than the estimated date. The Sirius alignment in question was originally proposed by Windorf and Malville, so they're talking about these different scholars. So initially, they were talking about dates dealing with the origin of the star map going back over 8,000 years ago, and then going back over 19,000 years ago. Of course, some of the other whites in our spring rush in and try to say, oh, that's too early. It really should be closer than that. They're always trying to make these things much more recent, because they don't want to admit the reality that our people were establishing these cities and engaged in advanced archaeological and astronomical calculations Akan to calculate or reckon astronomical calculations 20,000 years ago. Because, of course, that just proves in many different ways that we are the founders of civilization, and the whites in our spring founded absolutely nothing anywhere in the world. So, but the key is they had these astronomical solstices, equinoxes, series of Sapati, representation of the Milky Way, as well as which is the Hop or the Great Heavenly Nile, as well as Sa or Orion. That's very important for this discussion, because when you talk about the solstices and the equinoxes and Sa and Orion, we're not just talking about stars in the sky and position. As we said earlier, for us, the stars are vessels for Abosom, forces in nature that we communicate with, that possess our people. Sar governs the constellation Sa or Orion, which they have represented here. Set governs the constellation of Sapati, and the brightest star in the sky, Sapati, that they call Sirius. They have the Hop Ord, which is the Great Heavenly Nile, so-called Milky Way. And then you have Het Heru connected to that as well as the great cow in the sky and so forth. Then they have the representation of the summer solstices as well as the equinoxes. But because these are deities operating through these physical vessels, deities in our culture, of course, quite naturally operate in relationship to one another. They're family. Sar, Set get married, give birth to Heru. Set and Nebuchadnezzar are united. You have Heru and Het Heru united. These different divinities that they're talking about are all connected in a familial relationship, just like the different organs in your body are all connected in a harmonious fashion. So when you're talking about these different stars, they're also related to the other stars within the astronomical calendar, including the Ancient Khanitu, the wandering star, which is simply the name of the planet. So these are also laid out in relationship to the lines of the solstices and the equinoxes. The whites in our spring were only concerned, and they only big up or talk about the fact that they lined up the solstices and the equinoxes and talked about Orion and Sirius, or Sa and Sapati, because the whites in our spring were only focused, they were so excited about this notion of the precession of the equinoxes. They always tried to say that, well, you know, the blacks weren't able to understand the precession of the equinoxes. Only the Greeks were able to understand that. So white people understood that shift in time. But then they come across star maps of Ancient Kamit, as well as this most ancient astronomical calendar in Nabta Playa, and then it proves that we understood precession, the precession of the equinox. That's what, quote unquote, blew the mind of the whites in our spring, and this is why they're always talking about that aspect of the calendar. They don't even care about or even focus on the fact, also highlighting the relationship between the Ancient Khanitu, the planet. To them, that's not a big deal. They're like, well, everybody knows who the planets are, so what? But they knew about the precession. For our purposes, for this particular broadcast, what's key is the fact that they understood the planet, because it's right there laid out in their astronomical calendar. And because of the Akan calendar and the 7-day week and so forth, this is not something that the Akan learned later. These are the ancient Akan. These are the Akan of the A group, B group, and C group, Nubians and so forth. These are the ancient Akanu or Kahanu who migrated up that western corridor along that string of oases that go from southern Kamit and northern Khanit, Nubia, all the way through the western desert, all the way up to the Mediterranean. So some of them got to ancient Sumer through that route. Or you have other Afro-Akani people getting to ancient Sumer through the Happy Valley route and going up the river. The ones who lived in ancient Kamit, they established that 30-day cycle calendar, 30-day month, with the 3 weeks of 10 days each, based on the rising of these different constellations. But based on your needs, if you're living in a desert region, There's a different kind of need that you have with regard to calculating time. If you're living in a savanna region, as we talked about before this desertification took place, it was a savanna-type region. It was lush, aquatic, and so forth. There's a different kind of calendar system that you're going to develop. You talked about earlier that the West AKRADINBOSOM people lived south of Kamit thousands of years ago, and then they began to migrate to the west. That the Niger-Congo speakers, that includes the Igbo, the Akan, Mindi-speaking people, Bakongo people, and so forth, who were in ancient Khanit, Nubia, and southern Kamit, migrated a few thousand years ago to the western part of the continent. Prior to that, we were not populating that area. That's very important, because when you look in the Igbo cosmology, they worship the same deities from ancient Kamit with the same name. Look in the Yoruba tradition, the same is true. Look in the Fon and Ewe traditions, Bakongo traditions, Mini traditions, same deities, same names, same functions, and so forth. When the Igbo migrate, they migrate into where now southeastern Nigeria. They're in forest regions and so forth. They develop a 4-day calendar. Yoruba move into that third region, southwest Nigeria. They develop a 5-day calendar. The Guan-speaking people who are related to the Akan, but it's a different group, they were part of the ancient empire of Kana or Ghana as well. We move towards the forest belt. They're the first ones to come down to a forest belt and so forth. They develop a 6-day calendar, or they carry that 6-day calendar. Akan people have a 7-day calendar. Why did the Igbo develop a 4-day? Why did the Yoruba 5-day? Why did the Guan develop a 6-day? Why did the Akan have a 7-day calendar? Based on the regions you move to. If you're living in a desert region, you can track Sa or Orion, that constellation, every night for a number of nights in a row for a long time, because you're in a desert region like ancient Kamit, and that those constellations, those stars that are manifesting every 10 days, 3 weeks of 10 days each, that specific calendar, you can track that on a daily basis, because it doesn't rain in ancient Kamit, or Kamit just generally. The country is watered by the river and the inundation of the river, and that's how they get their crops and so forth. It hardly ever rains. So you're not seeing clouds in the sky and so forth. When you move to and you're living in an aquatic region or a forest region, and when you have the Harmattan, which is the dry period, and there are storms and so forth, but then you have the wet period like you have in Ghana, and you have a period of months where it's constantly the rainy period and the wet period. You will go for days and you won't be able to track those stars because there's cloud cover and everything else, and you can't have the same kind of calendar. So you have to have a different kind of calendar. You have to have a different structure. So we're talking about people in ancient Nabta Playa with the astronomical observation that includes not only the heavenly Nile, Hapur, not only Sa, which is Orion, not only Sapati, but also the solstices and the Ochin and Soroma, these relationships to these planets and the deities who govern these planets. They're all part of a family. If you know who Sapati is, you know that's Sirius, then you know Orion, Sa is our star, you know they're a family, then you know within that constellational structure and that astronomical calendar, you're going to find Heru, because he's the son of our star and our set. So you know one of those stones is going to be Heru. All you have to do is look for it and look at the proper position, and of course, bam, it's right there, you're going to find it. If you see the representation of Set in the stars and Nebuchadnezzar, you know there's going to be a connection. If you see different deities and you know their relationship, all you have to do is understand their relationships, and you'll be able to find those stones. And of course, that's what was taking place when people first began to uncover these different things. But again, the Whites and Offspring only focused on things that they were excited about. They didn't consider the Ochin and Soroma, the planetary stars. They didn't consider that as very important or anything to make a big deal about. For us, and the purposes of this discussion, that's key. We're in those aquatic regions. We established that 7-day calendar over 10,000 years ago. We've been using that 7-day calendar all along. South of Kamit, western Kamit, even after the desertification, we continue to use it. We went up into northern Africa. Some of those people remained in North Africa. They didn't go further. They just stayed in North Africa, and these are the Tuareg, the Berbers and so forth, the black ones, they remained there. They still have a 7-day week. They didn't learn that from the Romans. They had it all along because they came up from southern Kamit. They stopped in North Africa, and they continued their 7-day calendar. But some of the people kept going and went further north into the Near East, into Sumer, and carried that 7-day calendar up there. That route from southern Kamit through the western oases, that string of oases, that caravan going all the way up to the Wash-Ur Mediterranean and into the Near East. This is how we carried that 7-day calendar there. So that proves that continuity of culture from ancient Khanit, Nubia, all the way through to the so-called Near East, and then the White Nile Spring much, much later pick up that calendar. Okay. So it looks like, okay, so it's about 11:15, and it looks like we're going to have to close it down right now. So this is what we'll do. Okay, and hold on one second. We said a couple of comments right here. We didn't get a chance to take calls because we had a lot of information to get through, and we didn't want it to turn into a, over a 3-hour show. There's a comment. I tend towards Earth and its weather changes because of its own energy rhythm, but there is popular talk about climate changes caused by industrial activity. Do you think this is so? There are certain things that will, negatively affect climate. Of course, all these different chemicals that the White Nile Spring pollute the air with, whether it's through factories and things like that. Of course, they're going to oversist things with regard to climate change and create a crisis, because when they create a crisis, then they force you to have to respond to a crisis, and then they put together policy initiatives that respond to the crisis, and it turns into not only taxes and things like that, but them having to, quote unquote, take extra steps to control certain resources that otherwise they would not be able to access if there was no crisis. Oh, we need to move into this part of Africa and work these different kinds of resources to make sure we can stave off the onslaught of climate change. And when our people accept that nonsense, then what you're doing is accepting the White Nile Spring exercising even greater control over the Earth's resources because of a crisis that they created on a lower level, but then that they sensationalize for fear purposes on a larger level. So we never trust what they have to say, including their scientists, if our people have not done independent investigation to prove that, and not just aping or mimicking what the crackers say. Prove that information. Until our people do that, then you don't go along with what the White Nile Spring are saying. Okay. And another question I also wanted to ask, I understand that the Achiwadie folk, spirits of disorder of the White Nile Spring, cannot communicate with divinities, but can they with minerals, plants, stones? When you have Abosom forces in nature who have certain plants and, mineral life, as well as animal life that are sacred to them, that are totems for them or sacred to them, of course, the White Nile Spring cannot connect with them. Now, they can pick up a stone or a plant, and just like you can, chew, certain plants and everything and get some nutrients from them, and it'll have an effect on your body. They can do the same thing with, electromagnetic energy from plants that have a minimal effect upon them. But the key for us is when we're procuring medicine from plant life and mineral life and so forth, we're not just, on one hand, we're taking, of course, the minerals and the vitamins and everything else to feed our bodies, but when we're doing something ritual, we're connecting with the Abosom that govern those plants, as well as ancestresses and ancestors, spirits who are connected to those plants, that plant life. That's the difference. The only spirits they can connect with is some discarnate, deceased, criminal waiver type spirits who may be hanging around those plants and so forth. They ask those spirits to do something for them, and all they can do is something minimal, just like if you ask a homeless person to do something for you, they can only do something or run an errand for you that's very minimal. They don't have power and influence in society. And when they make their transition, they're the same way. So those are the only kind of spirits that they can work with. They can't work with the Abosom, who these plants are sacred to, or that are, or animals that are animal totems for the Abosom. They can't connect with the Abosom through these animals or this plant life or mineral life. Okay, so it's 11:18. We're going to stop it here. If you have any questions on the material, a couple of things. Number one, we're going to publish some information on this entire subject, everything we talked about tonight, including the, oases and linguistic information and the connection with the Akan and so forth. As far as the information dealing with the 7-day week, we did the 11 different articles on each one of those deities and proved that information, published some information on the Akan connection to ancient Sumer, the 7-day week in Akan, same deities in ancient Kamit, and the same deities in Sumer with the 7-day week, and the deities connected, in Lil and Utu and Nana and Inanna, and, different deities connected with the 7 days in Sumer. We're going to show the connection between those deities, which are the exact same deities, and their descriptive titles, which are the same. We talked about Nana being the moon, and Nana being a title of the moon in Akan, and Inanna being, title of Heteru, Venus in Sumer, and Inna, meaning mother in Akan, and so forth. So we're going to go through all 7. We're going to publish that information and the other stuff, things we talked about tonight. So we'll be doing that. But then if you have any questions, of course, you can hit us up on our Facebook, OG.FO on Facebook, or, Twitter, Instagram, OG.FO, YouTube, OG.FO. We have our own network, Akuraka-Akuraikai.ning.com, our own separate social media network. You can join that. We have an AKANFO NANASOM group on Facebook. You can join that as well. You can follow us on Blog Talk. Click the follow button on our Blog Talk channel page, front page. That way, anything we send out, you automatically receive that information. Any updates on Google+, we're OG.FO. You can connect with us there as well. So if you have any questions, of course, you can send us those, but we will be publishing some information, everything we talked about tonight in detail with additional information as well. So, again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning in. Please check out also our page, our Akongwa Suya Dine page, which is our page for our institution and the work that we do in our institution, whether it's publishing the book, everything that we do is born of our institution. Publication, broadcasts, and so forth, workshops, trainings. We have workshops on training human services agents on how to incorporate culture in their therapeutic interventions with their consumers, Black consumers only, of course, clients. We have, of course, the Oberima Afro-Akani Manhood book and the training associated with that for young males as well as, Afro-Akani men. We have the Kokobo movement, eradicating dissexuality, homosexuality through ancestral religion. We have, the Kum method of overcoming substance abuse through ancestral religion and so forth. So the different workshops we have, as well as the books, as well as the broadcast, presentations, all these different things are born of our institution. We're working to establish a physical space for our institution so we can expand that and expand the class offering. So we'll be having classes there. We'll have the publishing arm there. There will be employment opportunities. We also already have up and running the Nokwadifo option for people who would like to be distributors of our softcover books. Therefore, you can become employed immediately. If you have no income or you need some income, you can become employed immediately through purchasing books wholesale and selling them retail as an independent entrepreneur, not working for us, but working for yourself. But we already have that up and running for our people to access. When we establish our institution, we will be able to expand those employment opportunities, the entrepreneurial opportunities, as well as the class offerings, ritual observances, and so forth. We'll be having a conference coming up. We already had our Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival, which is in October. We're planning a conference in March for Ancestral Religion, Nanasom. That, as well as other events coming up as well, documentaries on this information as well coming up. So all these different things be part of the institution. So we're working to raise funds for a space so we can expand the work that we are already doing. We can expand that work on helping our people overcome, substance abuse, expand that work, expand the classes, expand the publications. We have many more books coming out. We have 17 books already. We have many more that need to come out that we're already working on. It will be well beyond 17. It will be beyond 50. We have many books coming out, many subjects. So all of that will be part of the institution, expanding what we're already doing. So we already have a track record. We want to expand on that. So if you like to support the work, any purchase or even any donation will support that work. Any donation of $15 or more, you have an option of receiving one or more of our books anyway, so it's not just a donation. You can always receive one or more of our books for your donation. So you can see all that information on our Nhoma Publications page. And Yerase, for those who have already donated or purchased books in support of our institution, we would like to have the institution open by March for the conference to inaugurate the opening of the institution. So, again, Yerase, we thank you for tuning in to the broadcast. And Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. That's up.